issue of mismanagement at NAWEC.
Ah.
You said, Doctor, you said billion. Did you say billions?
Yeah.
Billions have been mismanaged from 2017 to
Onward.
date.
Yes.
From NAWEC.
In fact, we don't know the whole story.
How did you get these numbers, Doctor?
Well,
I mean, I've not seen any press release about this one yet.
Well, how can they? I mean,
maybe when you speak about it properly and they understand, they will come out. But that is really serious. And as we speak, though, we looked at the NAWEC numbers the other time, how much money they owe in Senelec, how much money they owe. The minister told us how much they owe Senelec and how much they owe Car Powership. And at this point, we all know what is going on with the electricity issue. Now, if you're telling us this much money went into NAWEC and it's mismanaged, that is a very serious revelation. We also saw recently an audio that went around where procurement officers at NAWEC were talking about bribery with a company.
Inflating an invoice.
Inflating an invoice. And that came out. They have been relieved of their services. But again, in general, these numbers that you quoted, Doctor, is really serious. Can you please explain how that happened?
Yeah, no, I mean, that incident where those two NAWEC senior officials were caught inflating, it's a specific example of the general thing I uncovered at NAWEC. I mean, what I did basically was go through their audited financial reports from 2017 to 2020.
Yeah.
Now, before I go into that, if you go right now and ask the government or NAWEC, where are your financial reports from last year, from 2023? It doesn't, it's not out. From 2022, it's not out. 2021, it's not out. We are now in 2025. The last 5 years, nobody has any idea what is happening inside NAWEC. That alone should be, let's sit and reflect on that. That alone.
Let me come in. That is a general practice for all these parastatals.
Exactly.
Because I say this thing every year, because FATU is a small entity, but every year I'll do my accounts.
Exactly.
And based on those reportings, that is what I file at the GRA to be able to get my business license renewed, right? I take my returns. Every small company do that. All businesses do that.
Exactly.
But when it comes to private parastatals, all of them, even look at the audit reports. The reason why audit reports we're dealing with 2020, 2019 is because the companies have not presented their, they don't present their yearly reports on time. Why is that?
I mean,
are they not the same operations like every
No,
other
I mean,
person?
it should be, if you go to other countries, state-owned enterprises, parastatals, their financial reporting and transparency is just as good as any private company. In the Gambia here, I mean, it just tells you we don't have, the right leadership in place. If the government here is serious about financial transparency and mismanagement and combating corruption, if the government is serious about that, why is it that, like this today, the cabinet cannot ask, in the cabinet meeting, ask the Minister of Petroleum and Energy, you have NAWEC under you. Why is it that the financial report of 2023, why didn't it appear all of 2024? Should be able to answer that. The minister, if he cannot answer that, should be able to ask the management of NAWEC. Why is it that your financial report, the management, the MD, Deputy MD, Director of Finance and others, what are you doing throughout the year such that the whole of last year, your financial reports are not out? Because if you are doing your job as you're supposed to do, you have controls in place, you have controls and processes in place, you are documenting what needs to be documented, recording what needs to be recorded. It shouldn't take, at the end of each calendar year, a few months after that, the financial reports of the previous year should be out, scrutinized by everyone, scrutinized by the regulatory authority. But it's not only NAWEC. It's whether you go to GNPC, Gambia Post Authority, or any of the over 10 state-owned enterprise and parastatals we have. Because it's one thing to say you are combating corruption. It's another thing to look at the people's action to see whether they are consistent with it. Even the appointment of board members, this is not done based on expertise. It's based on who is, who's politically connected. So if you have a board that cannot hold the management accountable, and the management are not, they don't face the consequences of running things badly or are not rewarded based on performance, well, what are you going to do? Look, despite all of this that has happened, what do we have? The current Minister of Petroleum and Energy is from the management of NAWEC. So if you are telling me that you are promoting that person, then you are happy with whatever happened during his tenure at NAWEC. Before Nani, the guy who was there also used to be in the management of NAWEC at some point. So here the problem has different levels. You have the policy and strategic issues at the level of the central government and the cabinet. Then you have issues of management and oversight of that management at the board. So the selection is the higher level that select the composition of the board. The board is not selected well, and the management who is there in those state-owned enterprises, they don't face consequences for bad actions. They are not selected based on always on competence, and they are not rewarded on performance. So you will end up with management that do not deliver. So you have a management problem, you have a strategic problem, you have an oversight problem, you have a policy problem at a higher level. You have policy at every imaginable level. It would be a miracle for things to work well at NAWEC. So when I said, let me look a bit into NAWEC, I expected that I would have the financial reports from up to a few years. But no, the latest one for NAWEC that's available is from 2020. And that reports, when in any country where things are being handled well, each year, there should have been a special audit from the Auditor General's office to look into that. And a lot of people should be facing criminal investigations and should be facing jail time for that. Because you have on average, what auditors has, the private auditors, what they saw.
Yeah, what they saw.
Each year, there is more than $200 million that cannot be accounted for.
Each year?
Each year.
From the audited reports?
Yes. From 2017 to 2020, more than 200 million they cannot account for. They find these discrepancies in all sorts of ways. You remember the audio recording?
Yes.
Of they've been doing that for a long time. So you would see, like the account, the amounts that NAWEC is supposed to pay, what the vendors bring and what NAWEC records are completely different. Even loan balances, like NAWEC will say they're taking a loan from a particular bank. They'll say they've taken this amount is left. The amount that, if you go to the bank, that they will tell you what the balance that's there, and the balance that NAWEC will report in their books, they are different. The accounts receivable, that is the amounts that the payments that orders are supposed to make to NAWEC, when the auditors go and check versus what those people say they've made, what NAWEC is recording saying that they've received, they find millions different. The people, some of these senior management in NAWEC, they don't care at all. Let me give you some example. There are over millions of dollars where people have written payments to NAWEC in check. All these finance officials have to do is to take those checks and deposit at the bank. Because it's not their money, they just leave the checks lying until they get stale.
Whoa.
And that is in millions. In other words, money that is supposed to benefit NAWEC, it's just parked there because it's not their money. They don't care.
And just to take it to the bank to cash it.
Deposit it.
To deposit in the accounts.
In the account.
Oh.
That alone, it was found that there are millions of that lying. So the amounts that NAWEC will say we have paid to Senelec or we have paid to Car Power, and what those people will report that they've received, there are differences of millions. One time, these people, the auditors went and selected a sample of suppliers of like 5 suppliers, and they looked at what NAWEC has said that they would.
They were paying.
They've paid these people and what these people have actually submitted. They found a difference of $60 million. Just a sample of 5.
$60 million.
$60 million. So all of these things I'm saying, it's happening every single year. And if the government cares about this, the ministry cares about, all they have to do is open one of these reports.
So these are audit reports from 2017 to 2020.
And they are out there. And everyone in the government should have access to it. But no action is. Did you hear any action being taken about this? Because they don't care.
Wow.
This corruption left. But this is what, whenever an auditor goes and finds something wrong, there's always something they cannot see. Some things are well hidden.
Yeah.
So this is what we know. So from 2017 to now, if you take that average, you're looking at something that's well over $1 billion. In fact, if you calculate everything, the amount that is just embezzled from 2017 to now in NAWEC alone, if you invest that in a power plant, that is probably enough to take care of our electricity problems.
Goodness.
So the problems we have in the Gambia are not things where you say, oh, bad things are happening, we are doing our best, we cannot do anything about it. They are self-inflicted problems.
But Mr. Gajigo, the president, how can we blame the president for this? NAWEC has a management and staff. They are the ones who oversee these monies. They make these payments. And how do we blame the president? That NAWEC is a parastatal. Yes, I know the management is, president appoints the managing director. But again, the managing director oversees all of these things.
Okay.
How is that
How many managing directors have been at NAWEC since Arabaro came to power? At least 3 that I know of.
Yeah.
This
is the fourth one.
Fourth one, yes.
There was Fatajo.
Fatajo.
And then we have
We had Alpha Robinson,
Nani, Juara.
and then that's another
before Nani, there was this guy, shortly there was this, and then some, and then,
But as I told, there is a document called the Energy Sector Strategy, and I once wrote an article about this that tells you about where we are as a country in terms of our energy sector, how things are at NAWEC, what investments we need to do in order to grow, in order to reach our target. That document is discussed at the level of the cabinet. Who chairs the cabinet meeting?
President.
The president. That document was endorsed and approved by the cabinet, not anywhere else. From that strategic sector, at the high level strategy, then the government is responsible for making sure that the Department of Energy, the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy, is structured in such a way that they can oversee NAWEC. They also make sure that all the relevant institutions like PURA that will regulate it, it's the government who sets the leadership of PURA.
Yeah.
And PURA also, how many times have they changed heads since Adam Barrow came to power? Several times.
Yeah.
Currently, maybe the third or the fourth one is Njoguba. Before that, Job. Before that, somebody else.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to tell you is the responsibility, 100%, the overall responsibility is at the leadership of Adam Barrow. Because the strategic direction of the sector, saying how NAWEC should be structured, what are the problems at NAWEC. If you read that sector strategy, it tells you what are the problems at NAWEC, what needs to be done there. It specifically mentions financial management, financial soundness. All of those are mentioned there. What would prevent the president from finding out, tell me about the financial situation of NAWEC. Is it going well? Right now, are things going well? Yes or no? If they are not going well, what can be done to make sure they go well? And how can I find out that my wishes have been put into play in terms of policies, in terms of strategies?
But if in year out, auditors are flagging almost over 200 million mismanagement in this department, and this is something that is shared with the government and National Assembly and NAWEC themselves, year in, year out, for 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 4 years in a row, and government hasn't done anything. If I remember, if I'm right, I said this one time, I said, I know there's this commission about local governments, but if you combine all of these 7 regions, their budget is not even close to what is being mismanaged in some departments. What does this tell us? If something that all of them when it comes to NAWEC, that is our national utility, and one issue with NAWEC affects all of us indirectly. The reason why we don't have proper electricity, the reason why we don't have proper water supply is because resources. They said they don't have the resources to properly provide us all of these services. Now, if you're telling me year in, year out for the last 4 years, we're not even talking about 21, 22, 23, 24, these years, the auditors are flagging something like this. And they're flagging like a 60 million combined when they compare NAWEC numbers to suppliers, 60 million variations, and nothing is done about it. What does that tell us, though?
Well, what it tells us is quite clear. The message is unmistakable that this government, when it comes, here is something that the government cannot say they are powerless. Because like I said, the government changed the management. But when they change the management, realize it has nothing to do with the financial mismanagement. They change them for other reasons. In other words, they find other reasons more important than addressing the fundamental core problem at NAWEC. The government cannot say they are powerless at changing the minister, powerless at changing the management, powerless at changing the board. The government cannot say that. These are all some things under their control. The governments cannot say that they are unaware of what's happening because these are public documents. The government cannot say that they are unaware that for up to 4 to 5 years, nobody, no public scrutiny is possible because there are no financial statements, because the government has the power to compel management and tell them at the end of each calendar year you have 3 months to produce a financial statement. All other private companies, all other institutions do it around the world, year in and year out. If you cannot do it, leave the position for somebody else. Government has the power to do all of that. Yet we are seeing with our own set of eyes that they are not doing anything. They are doing, we know that they have the power and the ability to change personnel. We know they have the power and the ability to change many things. We've seen it in our own eyes. So the question now is, to answer your question, this question answers itself. If the government has the ability to change something, and they are seeing it before their own eyes, and they are deciding not to change it, what it tells us that the government is not serious about addressing problems there. The energy sector, electricity problem, if the government is serious about it, all this sort of audited statements that is showing all this mismanagement, it only has to take 1 year before you do something drastic about it. If you make a good example of the senior officials, mind you, let me make this quite clear. The NAWEC has a lot of employees. The vast majority are honest, hardworking.
Yes, they are.
It's just a few rotten apples. You make an example out of those rotten apples, and then people see that there is a consequence for bad behavior. And now there are people there who are doing a great job. You identify those people who are doing a great job. You reward them by promoting them. So there is a reward for good behavior. There are consequences for bad behavior. And people see that you mean what you say and you say what you mean. There will be changes in there. Because the amount, as I've said, the amounts that are lost at NAWEC every single year, these are more than enough to build a power plant to solve our energy problems without having to pay millions to Senelec, without having to pay millions to Car Power Ship.